Harper Lee's Untold Secret, what she buried inside To Kill a Mockingbird. You know what To Kill a Mockingbird is about? Racial injustice, a wrongful conviction, a small town lawyer who tries to do the right thing and loses. You know the story, but you don't know what Harper Lee was doing the year she finished writing it. And when you find out, the book looks completely different. The world she lived in. Harper Lee grew up in Monroeville, Alabama. Population 1,300. Her father, A.C. Lee, was a lawyer. He represented clients in the Monroeville courthouse, a courthouse that would become, in slightly disguised form, the setting for Tom Robinson's trial. A.C. Lee took cases other lawyers wouldn't touch. He represented black defendants in a legal system designed at every level to produce a specific verdict before the jury sat down. He lost. Not always, but in the cases that mattered most. The ones that should have been open and shut if the law meant what it said, he lost. Harper Lee watched this. She was 6 years old the first time she sat in that courthouse, and she was watching her father do something she would spend the rest of her writing life trying to understand. What does it mean to argue for justice in a room that has already decided? Lee did not grow up alone. Her childhood neighbor and closest friend was a small, strange, brilliant boy named Truman Capote. He would grow up to write in cold blood. She put him in a novel. She named him Deal. The year the book was finished. In November 1959, Lee was in the final stages of editing To Kill a Mockingbird. The book was due. Her editor was waiting. She boarded a plane to Kansas. The Clutter family has been murdered. 4 people, bound and shot in their own home. Truman Capote had decided to write about it. He needed someone who could get quiet, skeptical Midwesterners to open their door and talk. He needed Harper Lee. Lee spent weeks in Holcomb, Kansas. She interviewed dozens of people Capote could not reach. She kept the notes that would eventually become his book. She even wrote a magazine article about the case herself. Buried in an archive for decades, 5 years before In Cold Blood was published. This is what most readers of Mockingbird do not know. The woman who wrote about a wrongful conviction in a fictional Alabama courthouse was, at the same moment, investigating a real murder in Kansas, watching a real justice system work in real time, already knowing from her father's cases from the courthouse she grew up in what justice systems do when you press them too hard. The fictional articles and the real Harper Lee was working the same case from different angles. What she buried in the text. Tom Robinson's trial is not invented. In 1931, 9 black teenagers in Alabama, the Scottsboro Boys, were accused of raping 2 white women on a freight train. The evidence was contradictory. The testimony collapsed under cross-examination. The convictions came anyway. One of the women later recanted her accusation. The case reached the Supreme Court twice. Some of the men served years in prison for a crime that did not happen. Harper Lee set To Kill a Mockingbird in the 1930s. She gave Tom Robinson no escape. She made articles, legal arguments airtight. The evidence genuinely does not support conviction. And then she made the jury convict anyway. Most readers remember articles as the moral center of the novel. What they miss is the architecture of the outcome. Article wins the argument. He loses the case. Tom Robinson is shot trying to escape from prison. Lee did not write a story about justice prevailing. She wrote a story about what it looks like when the argument for justice is made perfectly and the system ignores it anyway. Because she had watched her father make that argument and she knew exactly how it ended. The book she could never finish. But there is a third case, one almost nobody knows about, one that Harper Lee spent 30 years trying to write and couldn't. In the 1970s, Lee began investigating a case in rural Alabama. A black preacher named Willie Maxwell was accused of killing 6 members of his own family for the insurance money. The evidence was circumstantial. The community was convinced of his guilt. The justice system kept acquitting him. Then at the 6th victim's funeral, a man in the congregation stood up and shot Maxwell dead. Lee was in the courthouse for the shooter's trial. The shooter was acquitted. She spent the next 3 decades trying to write that story as a book. The working title was The Reverend. She never published it. Read that alongside Mockingbird and something becomes clear. Lee was not a novelist who occasionally investigated crime. She was someone who spent her entire adult life trying to write about justice. And the only version of that story she ever finished was the one she gave to a child to narrate. Scout sees the trial clearly. She sees the verdict clearly, and she does not understand it. That is not a narrative device, that is the most honest thing Harper Lee ever put on paper. Every case Harper Lee was close to ended the same way. The evidence was clear. The system failed anyway. What changed was the book. To Kill a Mockingbird reached people who would never read a criminal appeal. It reached children. It reached classrooms. It reached 50 million readers who had never heard of the Scottsboro Boys, who didn't know about A.C. Lee's real cases, who would never know that Harper Lee was in Kansas when the book was being finished, or in an Alabama courtroom watching a murder trial when she was supposed to have moved on. She never moved on. She buried it all inside the story. That is what writers do when the truth is too large for an argument. They put it in a child's mouth and they wait. If this changed how you see the book, the audiobook is worth hearing with this reading in your head. Link below, first month free. Every video goes somewhere most readers don't. Subscribe if you want to keep going. I'll see you there.